The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Professor Tarabishi from the George Washington University, and you're joining us for the Business Leadership Series. And this Business Leadership Series is hosted and supported by USPAC, and we're very thankful for USPAC for leading the way in hosting these Business Leadership Series. We will start in a minute just to get the recording going. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so let's start the session here. Again, this is USPAC, and this is the Business Leadership Series, and we've been doing these now for over 2 years, so we're very delighted to continue our sessions here. My name is Ayman Tarabishi. I'm a professor at the George Washington University, and I play the host for the Business Leadership Series, and I'm very delighted to do so. Today's topic, which is very exciting in my opinion, and it's very timely, is on artificial intelligence and opportunities for small business. I think all of us have been inundated in the media and in print and also on the radio about the future of AI. We've heard of artificial intelligence in many, many different aspects, including the driverless cars, trucks, and most of you will probably have or are looking into or heard of people that have Alexa, Siri, Google Home, and much, much more. So what is artificial intelligence, and why is it captivating everybody's attention? And is it here, or is it coming very fast, or it's already here and we don't know it? And what's the impact? More importantly, what's the impact on small businesses in the United States? A lot of questions, a lot of ideas, a lot of discussions to happen. So I'll limit mine and we'll get right to the point here. I'm delighted to introduce Mr. Rachit, Dhir, Vice President of Global Consulting for Healthcare and Insurance. Rachit, thank you very much for coming and welcome to the Business Leadership Series of USPAC. How are you doing today?
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm doing very well and excited to be here.
Good. The first time you heard of artificial intelligence, do you remember when? When was the first time you heard it, and what was your first ideas about it?
Yeah, so good question. So I've been hearing about it since childhood. I think artificial intelligence is not new. Robotics have been there since 60s and 70s or even before. But it's, I think, the art of possible through artificial intelligence today. The ability to apply artificial intelligence today to the enterprise, within an enterprise, and having people understand and apply artificial intelligence and reap the benefits of artificial intelligence. That is the age we live in. And that is why we say artificial intelligence now, although it has existed ever since last many decades. But today, the computing power, ability to analyze new data, doing things real time is making the art of possible of artificial intelligence very real for enterprise.
So you have an excellent PowerPoint you'd like to share with us. So let's get to your presentation, and then I'll probably have more follow-up questions to ask. So the floor is yours, and thank you again for coming.
Thank you very much. Can you move to the next slide, please, Jordan? Yeah, so what we'll cover today, there are different definitions of artificial intelligence, although all we understand that artificial intelligence is more about developing computer systems that can be trained to do human job, whether it is speech recognition or a driverless car or taking some intelligent decisions and so on. But what does it mean for an enterprise today, especially the small and medium enterprises, and how you apply, how you understand the artificial intelligence in that world? There's a lot of noise, as there was a lot of noise about big data several years ago. So my objective today will be to relate artificial intelligence to enterprise context and help you guys understand how you basically apply artificial intelligence for sustainable and measurable business impact. Second thing we are going to do today is we are going to touch upon few of the service areas which forms a part of AI transformation value chain, because people do understand what is the art of possible or what artificial intelligence can do, but how you embed that within an enterprise, right? How you drive an AI transformation strategy, and what are the critical components of executing it. That is, again, we are going to touch. And in the last, I'm going to discuss how do we accelerate AI in an enterprise. Although many organizations have just started scratching the use of AI, and some are still in the conceptual phase. And there are lots of discussion in the boardroom how we get started with the AI journey. But there are a few organizations which are doing it ahead of others, and how have they accelerated? What are the critical success factors is the third thing we are going to discuss. We can move to the next slide. So we particularly believe that there are 5 key dimensions of AI-led revolution. I will start with middle right, which is data. Instrument everything. There's a lot of data being generated today. You have IoT data, you have data coming from sensors, and that data is humongous. And today, AI can help you analyze each and every data which is coming in a fraction of a second or less. So instrumenting everything, because today we have capability to analyze that is vital. We should absolutely fuse external data and leverage a lot of unstructured data. So I'm going to take some you guys through some examples where images have been analyzed to disrupt fundamentally the way the business is being conducted today. Second is real time. AI today brings a lot of decisions being taken in real time. It is narrowing the gap between the lead time required to generate the information and taking an action. Today, action can be taken on data which was generated a few minutes ago or a few hours ago. Third is cognitive computing. We need to incorporate a feedback loop. There are a lot of deep learning methods which can self-learn, and based on the feedback loop, you can improve your algorithms to perform the task better. Fourth, intelligence augmentation. There's a lot of talk about data-driven culture. Yes, we need to build that, but a lot of automation and intelligence augmentation need to be done to simplify the consumption of data and insights that will be driven by AI. And finally, the disruption. AI has the possibility of fundamentally disrupting the way the business is performed. We have talked about driverless car. Today, we are going to talk about in an insurance scenario how you can get rid of adjusters, and through the images captured from drones, how could you predict your losses or what is the loss and so on. So that is fundamentally changing the way the underwriters and adjusters in insurance industry are basically addressing or managing claims. Similarly, radiologists are using a lot of AI-led or AI-driven algorithms to predict diagnosis when those algorithms analyze images such as CT scan and X-ray, thereby assisting radiologists in a lot of work they are already doing and having them focus on more core activities and taking up what radiologists have been doing for years. We can move to the next slide. So this is an example where a lot of insurers today leverage machine learning algorithms, which are part of AI, to analyze adjuster notes and predict things like the likelihood of any particular claim being litigated or the likelihood of any claim being fraud. If you see here, structured data models have delivered certain accuracy. In this case, if we looked at the bottommost line, the model accuracy coming from structured data, which is claims data, and other policy characteristics and the characteristics of the claimant, is 68%. Adjuster notes, today a lot of machine learning models are able to analyze those notes and text data and give additional accuracy. And if you combine these models, you are able to improve your accuracy by 6 basis points, which is humongous, because if you are able to correctly focus on the claims which are likely to get litigated, you could prevent a lot of losses or money or expenses going into the litigation. So that is the art of possible that is coming through new type of data, text data, where artificial intelligence is already making an impact in industry. Next slide, please. I want to take an example of cognitive computing here as well. If we move to slide number 7. So we have talked a lot about predictive maintenance today, and that is becoming possible. Gone are the days when you will basically maintain or perform maintenance when the fault has occurred. From there, the world moved to scheduling maintenance on a monthly, weekly, or quarterly basis. But today, there are machine learning algorithms available which should identify, analyze a lot of signals from IoT data, sensor data, which can help your machine predict the breakdown time and the components of the machines which will also break down. So today, it's possible for a gearbox to predict its own breakdown based on the feedback loop, and the algorithm self-learns based on the past breakdown, what is the cause of that breakdown, and what can be the future breakdown as well. Next slide, please. So I already talked about this. So world today is moving from scheduled maintenance to predictive maintenance. And that is also one component of AI where self-learning and feedback loop analysis and algorithms such as machine learning and other predictive models have already helped enterprises move from scheduled to predictive maintenance. Next slide, please. Intelligence augmentation. This is my favorite slide, right? Now, in the healthcare industry, especially in health insurance, right, there's a big cost which is associated to medication non-adherence. A lot of patients will not take medication, and it will result in a lot of complication coming back to ER every month or every week and so on. We need to augment intelligence with new signals, and here the new signal is behavioral science. As much as some of the predictive algorithms have been able to predict the medication non-adherence behavior and what is driving that, for example, low income might be driving patients not to take pills and they cannot afford, or is it their single dwelling status and cognitive disability, and even nurses calling them does not push them to take or nudge their behavior to take pills. So what is going on? So there's a lot related to behavioral science where people think of relevance, things like whether the medications are conflicting with their goal of better life, or they may have implications thought through, such as, I don't have symptoms, why should I take medications? Or it also relates to their thinking about that taking medication goes against their self-image of being healthy, or not wanting to be seen to self or others being dependent on medication, and many other things. So all these things, if you instrument new types of these signals and augment the existing intelligence, it will only help nudge the right kind of patient behavior or any other customer behavior. And there are specific research techniques which are available and analysis techniques to basically unearth the signals coming from the behavioral and cognitive science, which can augment intelligence. Next slide, please. And lastly, right, fundamentally, there's a lot of disruption going on. I briefly talked about teaching machines to read X-rays, CT scans, and MRIs. Even fractal analytics itself is, and many other organizations have ventured into this area where we are building deep learning algorithms to predict the diagnosis from these scans. If we see in the next slide, what is the problem we are challenged with, right? Growth in imaging and lack of radiologists is leading to errors. 100 million chest X-rays every year are taken in the US, and radiologist error rates are 20 to 23%. Similarly, in stroke, door-to-needle time is recommended is less than 1 hour, and radiologists just don't have the bandwidth to analyze all the scans timely. So what is happening is that if you are able to develop some algorithms which will not essentially replace radiologists, but will support radiologists with basic scanning and diagnosis so that radiologists can support on more core activities is the need of the hour. And in the next slide, we will see that these algorithms, which are developed based on deep neural networks, next slide, please. They are transforming radiology. They are increasing the productivity because due to lack of doctors, they are able to predict diagnosis and acting as radiologists themselves. Because these algorithms are trained on hundred thousands of scans and which are handled by different radiologists, they are more accurate than even humans because single human, because they bring together the experience from all the scans which were tagged as normal or abnormal. Third is reproducibility. Disease like interstitial lung disease, physician may disagree on diagnosis, but AI algorithm will be more consistent and reproducible. And fourth is comprehensiveness, because at times radiologists with naked eye are not able to either detect discrepancy or fault in the X-ray or CT scan, but they are not able to quantify how intense is that as well. So the algorithms are trained to do that better. In the next slide, we will see how this has been applied, and deep neural networks, which are today predicting diagnosis using CT scan, X-rays, and MRIs, are being deployed in several areas. And these solutions by many companies today are already in production in many of the countries, whether it is related to tumor area segmentation of the brain MRI or trying to identify ischemic lesions or to perform chest X-ray screening and so on. These all solutions are already, again, as I said, not replacing radiologists, but are liberating a lot of bandwidth of radiologists to focus on other things and bringing a lot of accuracy for doctors to rely on the scans. This is one example of disruption. My another favorite example is in the next slide. We all know that there was a huge hurricane Irma, and it has been put that there was about 25 billion to 65 billion of loss. Can we disrupt this using AI machine learning algorithms? Because what will happen is that, just imagine when hurricane happens and the catastrophic claims coming in, how much is the burden on the claim adjusters to manage those? And how many claims, when you have millions of claims coming in within a week or within 3 days, unless you have algorithms who can help you analyze those claims, no human can do it. In the next slide, we'll see that where AI is already leveraged in the US and across the world, where deep learning algorithms are evaluating rooftop damages. In this picture, the algorithm which is trained will ascertain what is the type of damage and what is the extent of the damage. And when these algorithms run off millions of claims, the task, which was merely impossible by sending thousands of claim adjusters to the sites, can be done by images taken by drone and analyzed through an algorithm. So if we see in the next slide how algorithm reads these images, it will say that the result is damage type is shingles missing and 25% rooftop is damaged. So it has practically replaced any adjuster who would have gone and given the same information. And just imagine not only the cost they have saved by sending adjuster, but in catastrophic claims, they have basically analyzed each and every claim, because what happens in catastrophic claims is that 80 to 90% of the claims go even not inspected, right? Because you can't send adjusters everywhere. So it's a huge savings to insurance companies. And all types of insurance companies, from small, mid to large insurance companies, can leverage this.
Hello? Are you there? Jordan, are you there?
I'm here.
I am here.
Did we lose Rachit?
I still see him on the line.
Okay, But did we lose Rachit? Are you there? Okay, we might have had some technical issue with Rachit here. Let's just give him a minute. Okay. All right. All right. So let's just move. Maybe he'll come back again here. Jordan, can you switch to Dr. Winslow's slides, please?
Yep. Hold on a second. Okay.
Okay. Rachit, is Rachit back? No. Okay.
Yes.
Dr.
Yes,
Winslow, are you there? You're back. Okay.
I'm back.
Sorry. Let's switch again. We lost you for a couple of minutes here.
Oh, I don't know. I was not able to see the slide, but yeah, if we can go back to slide 19. I have just a couple of more slides, and then I will hand over.
Okay, great. Thank you. Jordan, can you switch back?
Yep. 1 second. Hold on a second. Yep, right here. Okay. Oh.
Have you switched it?
Yeah, I'm attempting to get back to the slide we were on. Oh. Sorry about that.
You there?
Yep, I'm just, okay, here we go.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
We can move next. So what I was trying to say is that is AI the future? Yes, but it has significantly arrived already. We have seen few examples, and the use of AI is only going to increase. Next slide, please. Yeah, we can move next. So the second part I wanted to quickly cover is what services are part of AI. Now, we know the art of possible. We know that a lot of small and large organizations are already benefiting from AI. But if any enterprise needs to get started, what are the critical components we need to think through and address? We can move to the next slide, Jordan. So very simply, I have put this AI transformation ecosystem. On the top is AI service value chain. Any enterprise that needs to get started on AI needs to come up with AI strategy. And AI strategy, simply put, is identifying the use cases which may benefit from AI, right? We have seen some examples already, whether it is related to analyzing new data like images, and today video data is being also analyzed, or is it a real-time use case, or it is augmenting intelligence with new types of techniques, behavioral science, or fundamentally disrupting the way any business is performed. We need to identify those use cases, and then you need to execute those use cases. You need to develop those algorithms, and then you need to operationalize the output. It is like any analytics value chain you may have seen. And then there are a lot of enablers which need to be tweaked a little, because with AI, the amount of data, the type of data is different. The need to generate insights is more real time, and so on. So how you manage and engineer your data, what tools and technology you need to deploy, do people need to have some different skills? That all needs to be decided, and that blueprint needs to be created. In many cases, 70 to 80% of the skills or the tools and technology which already exist will be sufficient, but there will need to be some extensions and expansions that need to be made. So every time once you think of a use case, we should think that whether this was possible earlier or not, and if it is possible today, how we can use. Like analyzing drone images may not be possible 5 or 10 years ago or 7 years ago, and maybe the algorithms which could analyze those images to predict whether it's a shingle damage and to what extent was not possible earlier, but is possible today. And that becomes a use case. So that is the lens with which enterprises should think through, that along all the 5 dimensions or more of AI, what use cases can benefit along one or more of those dimensions. For example, if we move to the next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah. So like rooftop damage analytics, which basically has disrupted the way basically the adjusters today analyze the damage. They don't need to go and inspect, and they can do it with drone images being analyzed by algorithm being run in the enterprise itself. So is this a new AI use case? Definitely. It analyzes new data, which is drone images, and it is fundamentally disrupting the way the business is done. Here, instead of sending adjusters, the algorithm is doing it. Similarly, instead of radiologists trying to predict or analyze the diagnosis, algorithm is doing that. So if something fundamentally disrupts and is possible, that is an AI use case. And if we have to implement that, what are the key operationalization considerations or data engineering considerations? Do I have enough tools and technology to implement it or analyze it? And do we have the right people? Those are the next questions. And here we know that, yes, you need to do a few things differently. Image normalization is different than when you normalize any structured data. Now bringing drone images to big data stack, because your multiple millions of drone images cannot be analyzed through the conventional data stack or tools or technologies. You need big data stack, and you need people who understand image processing and deep neural networks. The earlier data scientists or conventional analysts who understand SQL or SAS or even R may not work, and within R or Python they will need to have capability to develop deep neural networks and so on. So that is how you build your strategy, identify the right kind of use cases, think through what will be needed, and then get on to executing it. I've taken just one example. That is how, when we support a lot of enterprises, we create the blueprint for their AI strategy. The blueprint will have, say, 10 or 20 of these, and those 10, 20 use cases, once convinced that are AI use cases and what is needed to implement them, goes into the execution mode and so on. And my last slide, next slide, please, or next to next, is how do we accelerate AI in the enterprise? We can keep on clicking, Jordan. So ensure executive leadership, alignment, and buy-in, as in case of any analytics program as well. We need to invest a lot in data strategy. That is the biggest thing we have realized in AI implementation. Data is always the oil, but to implement your AI use cases, you need to invest in data strategy, because a lot of use cases will come with new kind of data, whether it is images, sensor information, video, or scans or whatever. And in order to analyze millions of those data points, and either in real time or really fast, you need state-of-art data instrumentation infrastructure, which is scalable and future-proof, and non-rigid data structure. So a lot of investment is required in data strategy if you need to embark and accelerate on the journey of AI. And promoting data-driven decision-making, which exists today, also needs to be pronounced even further. And yes, we need to invest in hiring right people and upskilling them. Till now, in last 10 or 15 years, the skills of any analyst were transferable, in the sense that anyone who is working to build a dashboard in Tableau was also able to quickly learn how to run a segmentation exercise or build a predictive model using logistic regression or so on. But today, if you need someone to drive AI vision or execute AI use cases, they need to learn deep neural networks. So they need to be expert in Python, Spark, Impala, many other technologies and tools. And hiring the right people, upskilling them is required. Right, a lot of investment is required in hiring some new people and significantly upskilling the existing people, because self-learning and trying to learn on what they have built will not accelerate it. That is what we have seen, and even in our organization, we have, and many other organizations, consulting organizations, which have been in business of helping clients solve business problems through data and analytics. They are reinventing themselves to an extent that the entire workforce is being retrained to face and address the challenges of AI, to show the art of possible and also execute that those use cases to make that art of possible look reality. Thank you.
Rachit, thank you very much. Very, very comprehensive, and I must say, very complex. But let me ask you a question here. The impact. Let's just talk about the impact here, right? All of this is potentially going to create some sort of imprint. It will change the way we do things. But how soon do you see this impact really affecting the lives of people, the daily lives of people, the people that are working day in, day out, that are engaged with all these activities? When do you see all this starting to change? You know,
yeah.
What's your opinion?
So my opinion is it has already started, but it will happen more as the initial use cases, which are proof of concept, are delivering impact, right? And when those are scaled, it will be realized the impact and how fundamentally things are changed, how they are performed, will be scaled, and you will see more of it happening. For example, already quite a few hospitals, right, very cautiously though, have started using these deep learning or AI algorithms to predict diagnose. Once they find it that the accuracy of the algorithm is equal to or even better than radiologists, the operationalization of that solution across the world is only going to increase, right? Similarly, as I mentioned about drone images, right, for insurance, it is already going to changing fundamentally how you analyze your claims, and very soon you will see in next 5 years that 90% of the claims, catastrophic claims related to roof damage or even car damage, will be adjusted without adjuster being sent, right? And once these things start happening, you will see the larger things also coming through. We are already talking about driverless cars, and in next 3 or 5 years, that will be reality, right? So I would say we are still in the proof of concept phase, where organizations are testing that when we say that never send a human to do machine's job, and we are training machines to do it. As a proof of concept, it has started happening, but the world is waiting to see the accuracy of these new models, business models, which have been disrupted, and they are just cautiously watching the benefits and any significant change they may drive. And once they realize that the impact is there with no risk at all, it is only going to scale. So my short answer is, next 2 to 3 years will be still the proof of concept for AI, where different types of solutions will be locally applied to seek benefits and cover your risk. And maybe in next 5 to 7 years, AI will really blow out significantly, where, as we say today, analytics has become the norm and the way businesses take decisions. AI will become the norm and the way they take decisions and run their organizations in next 5 to 7 years.
Great, thank you, Rachit. Jordan, let's switch slides for Dr. Winslow. Dr. Winslow, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so you've heard Rachit's explanation, right? That it's a proof of concept here, right? I want you, and the title of yours is Artificial Intelligence Opportunities for Small Business. We got a very scientific, we got a very complex, and I must say the word complicated comes in, because I thought it was just simple switching on and off button, but it's not that simple. So how does it impact small business? What's your take on all this? How do you see small businesses being impacted, and what are the opportunities for these small businesses?
Well, thank you, Dr. Tarabishi. Once again, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Winslow Sargeant. I am the Senior Vice President for partnerships with the International Council of Small Business. And also, I am a former chief counsel for the Office of Advocacy at the U.S. Small Business, the U.S. Small Business Administration. Next slide, please, George. Just a little bit about ICSB, and I'll be brief. It was founded in 1955, the International Council for Small Business. ICSB was the first international membership organization to promote the growth and development of small businesses worldwide. So there's always been an emphasis in making sure that we provide the resources, the management, development tools, and what's needed to make sure that we have a healthy environment for small business. And so this is going to lead into why AI is going to create a lot of opportunities for small businesses that we have not seen before. Next slide, please. So just a little bit about me, my background. I'm trained as an engineer. So when you talk about artificial intelligence, it's near and dear to my heart, because when I was coming up, you know, we were classified as geeks and nerds. But because of all the success that technology has had and made inroads into the way we work and live and do business, those neat nerds and geeks has now become techies. We've been upgraded to techies, and so now we're no longer outcast. Now everyone wants to be a techie and wants to be in their company. And so I have started a number of companies. Some have been very, very successful along the way. As I mentioned, I was the 6th Chief Counsel for Advocacy at the U.S. Small Business Administration. That's an appointee position. I was a direct report to President Obama. I had to go through a Senate confirmation hearing for that position. I also spent time at the National Science Foundation, where a number of technologies that we are using were funded. I think of Qualcomm, I think of technologies that were used by Google and Yahoo. These are the various technologies that were funded at the research stage, and eventually they made their way into commercialization. I've also served on a number of boards, IEEE, a number of technology companies, and I have listed a few schools that I have attended along the way. Next slide, please. So when we talk about artificial intelligence and the fourth industrial revolution, we think about the robots, and robots come to mind. But when you think of artificial intelligence, I think that a better word or a better expression would be machine learning, because when you think of artificial intelligence, you don't know what that means, and sometimes people think of robots. And yes, robots are part of AI, but it's more of how do we interface with machines and how does the learning impact takes place. And so the first industrial revolution, which was in the late 1700s to the early 1800s, that dealt with the mechanization of agriculture. So we used to use tools, and then of course there was a better way to mechanize the way we use agriculture to have food for us in production. So the second industrial revolution, of course, that just dealt with the railroads and telegraphs and sewage system and electrification. The third industrial revolution, that was the digitalization of manufacturing. Fourth industrial revolution, that's where we are going today. That deals with the, bringing together the physical, the digital, and the biological worlds. And so we think of 3D printing, robotics, and then of course there's that holy grail of quantum computing, which, I studied quantum mechanics, and we still are searching for quantum computing. There's no quantum computing or no quantum computer that is available, and we still don't know what a quantum computer will look like with the different spins and the different states of the quantum levels, but we will see going forward. Next slide, please. So when we think of, so let's go with the word. When we think of artificial intelligence, let's look at what we have, right? When it comes to small business, we know that in the U.S., 99.7% of all businesses are classified as small business, right? So, and that's the definition of 500 employees or less. We also know that 50% of the GDP is generated in the U.S. by small business. We also know that the workforce, 50% of the workforce work for what we classified as a small business. But we also know there are about 30 million small businesses in the U.S. But what is not commonly known that 80% of those businesses, about 24 million of those 30 million small businesses, are what we call non-employers. That means that they don't have any employees. So it's either a lifestyle company or it's a person who is a consultant and he or she has their own small business. And so what that is meaningful, because when you think of AI, what we're seeing with small businesses these days, that if you look at the curve and look to see what's happening and who's starting small businesses, we're starting to see that small businesses are being formed by a smaller and smaller teams. The reason why back in 1998, 2000, you had the average small business may have started with five employees, but now you're starting to see that whittle down to 2 or 3. And the reason why is because of AI, because of technology. Now you can outsource your HR, you outsource your health, you outsource your accounting, you outsource a whole bunch of things. So now you have a lean and mean team. And that's because of technology. You can liken it to because the impact of AI. So when Rachit talks about how the fact that we're way into AI, yes, this has been a trend that we've been seeing for many years. Of course, now we're starting to see it accelerate. But let's look at what we see with the current wave and why we believe, or why it is believed, that we're on the poise to finally break through. And so in 2016, companies spent between 26 billion US to 39 billion on artificial intelligence. Most of this is spent by the tech giants, because technology companies have embraced AI because they understand the impact. Now, I mentioned the fact that a number of companies start out, they're starting with the smaller teams. You notice that between 6 billion to 9 billion was spent on startups alone. So startups are not just, focused on creating the solutions for AI, coming up with new advances that will push AI. They also are using AI in their business. And so if you look at the pie chart to your right, you see that 20% of all AI-aware firms say that they're adopters. And so when we think of technology, there's a great book called Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore. It's an old book, but it's still a relevant book. And it talks about when you look at technology, when you look at small businesses, when you look at customers, they're what we call the early adopters, those who will embrace technology, those who are on the cutting edge. And then with AI, we're seeing that there are a number of companies who are going to be the early adopters. They understand the possibilities. They understand that to get the advantage on the customer, to gain market share, to be more competitive, they're looking at ways of embracing these tools we call AI or machine learning. And so there's a tremendous amount of money that is being spent to right size or to equip these companies. Now, the great thing about AI or artificial intelligence, that the age we're in, that it's not really a technology play that we have come to know. In the third industrial revolution, it was about the digitization of technology and making sure that we have routers and making sure we have broadband. But now what's exciting is about this age is that we're starting to really embrace, I call the humanics, or when we talk about the humanics, that's the capability of a machine to imitate the intelligent human behavior. And so those who come from artistic backgrounds, those who come from the humanities, and those who may not be technical in nature, that's okay because, Dr. Tarabishi and I, we wrote an article titled "People Over Profits," and what this article started out by saying is that that if you had gone to any city in the world, that the most knowledgeable person in that city who knew the city was the taxi or cab driver. He or she understood the roads, they understood the neighborhoods, and that was the intelligence that they had. And it was in their brain, and it was from years of experience understanding where things were. But nowadays, because of artificial intelligence, because of machine learning, you go to any city, you ask someone to take you to a street, he or she will probably jump on their phone and Google or use some type of media to locate that location. So in this world of AI, it's not what's in your brain anymore. It's not the knowledge that you have in your brain. It's how do you use knowledge? How do you access knowledge? And that's the exciting thing, is that you don't have to be what we call a brainiac anymore. What you have to have is some creativity and entrepreneurship. That if you have those two ingredients, making use of AI, making use of access to knowledge, then that's how you can right-size your business. That's how you can really make a contribution to this age that we're in. Next slide, please. So, but to make use of that, as Dr. Rachit said, he made the case that you really have to understand the sources of value, right? I mean, so it's not like you're going to just say, well, I'm going to know a few things about AI, and I'm going to start a business. I'm going to apply these technologies. No, it's important that you understand that you can articulate the need and to create a business case. And that's where the entrepreneurship aspect comes into play. That's why, it's not just about knowledge anymore. It's how do you make use of the knowledge that you have? And once you do that, then you can break down the data silos, and you can decide of how to aggregate the data and how to put it together to create high-level value. And of course, there are tools that you can use. You can identify various AI tools and partner to acquire or to plug in those capability gaps, because what you want to do is to take an agile test and learn approach to your business. And how do you integrate that to make it work? And that's where with AI, the various tools that you have, whether it's the CRM, the customer relationship management tools. Now with technologies, you can access the marketplace much easier with AI, but also not just AI, but because of the internet. Once you have a website, you're a global company. So you're not just confined to your region or your state or your province or your prefecture. It's a global company, and now you can use these tools to really adopt and open and to collaborate and to build AI such that you can get a workforce that is very, very competitive. Next slide, please. But how are companies adopted AI, right? And so we talked about the various ways to access data. And so what we're seeing, especially, in retail, for example, that if you go to any, in the U.S., if you go to any Home Depot or Panera Bread, or even to the grocery store, you're seeing more use of machine learning or the self-checkouts. We call them self-checkouts, but that's all part of AI, where that you go into a store and that you may not actually interface with a human being, right? So you go into the store and you seek out your product or your service, and then you check out, and you may not have a conversation with a person. And so we're seeing that. We're also And so it's in retail, it's in media. We're also seeing it in education with AI, with machine learning. Now more courses like this, webinars. We're seeing that you may be part of a course, may be part of a cohort that you may not see each other in person, but you're in a virtual world where you're sharing notes, you're sharing ideas. You may get to know each other, but yet from a physical, being in the same location or being in the same, or being in touch with each other, that's not the case. And so we're seeing 6 characteristics of early AI adopters. What we know is that in terms of technology, typically they're digitally mature. That means they've used technology. They're larger businesses. But now we're seeing, that has been in the past, but now we're starting to see smaller businesses because they understand that using technologies, like I said, especially to promote their technologies, for their products, their services, to identify partnerships, Google AdWords, Facebook, social media. Those are some of the things that small businesses are using to get the word out. But more importantly, and I want to stress this, what we're seeing in this 4th industrial revolution is that there is a need for customization. In the past, in previous years, it was a one-size-fits-all, right? So those who mass produce things, a certain handbag or shoes or a product, it was mass produced. But we started to see a shift, especially very early on, like with the Dell computer. Although that's a larger business, they understood that they needed to customize based upon the preference of someone who was a customer. Well, we're seeing that more with small businesses. They understand that for a small business to compete, it's hard to compete on a massive scale, but with 3D printing or with other technologies, now you can compete because you're providing the customer experience that they may not be able to get from a larger company who may be committed to just focus on the one-size-fits-all. Next slide, please. So basically, if we're looking at some of the benefits of AI to small business, so as I mentioned, the intelligent customer relationship management system. So we're looking at compiling information across email, phone, text, social media. So more and more small businesses who in the past would have to pay an arm and a leg to get access to this type of information, to know who their customers are, to know what their preferences are. Now it's much, much easier because of AI. AI for marketing. And so now one can market across multiple channels. There's AdWords, there's Facebook, there's Bing. And so once again, to get the word out in terms of sharing what your advantage is, and then at a cost that is affordable, is something that AI is bringing. When you think of hiring, you can streamline the application process. And so rather than having to wade through a whole bunch of resumes or go through that process, now you can use technology now where there could be an automated response, or using the machine learning to focus in on those who would be a fit for your company, and to focus on what strengths that they have. With regard to training, now one can coach salesperson to provide the information necessary for closing sales. And so those are some of the things that AI will bring to small business. But once again, the two things that a small business needs, especially to be an entrepreneur, is to bring the creativity, is to bring the entrepreneurship, not so much the technical aspect, but the creativity. Do you have the creativity? Are you looking at ways to connect with your customer? Do you have an entrepreneurship aspect to say, okay, I have this advantage, now I know how to commercialize that advantage, and I'm going to use AI, I'm going to use data, I'm going to use big data, I'm going to find a way to dive into that big data using AI really tease out what are some of the advantages or what are some of the niches that others may not be covering, so that so that the business can be competitive. And so that's what AI is bringing. And so these are very, very exciting times. Next slide, please. So, this last slide is a picture of me. I happened to be out in Seattle last month in January of 2018 for the opening of Amazon Go. And that's a prime example of AI, where this is a new store, as many as you know, where you have to use your smartphone and you download your code, and where that will allow you to scan that code on entry to get into the store. So there are no salespeople, there are no receptionists, and so there are people there. There are only a few people who are in the store, and that's mainly because alcohol is being sold in the store. So they need, by rules and regulation, you need to have a person there who will physically take a look to see whether or not the person who wants to buy the alcohol or take the alcohol is of age. But this is a wave of the future, where you just scan your code, you go into the store, you pick your item off the shelf, you put it in a bag, and so they provide us these Amazon Go bags, these orange bags. So you put your item in the bag, and then you walk out through these scanners. And so within a half an hour to an hour, because you have an Amazon account, your account will be debited, will be charged for the items that you have picked up. Of course, they're using RFID technology. They're using a whole host of things, that allow the user to buy the item, but also for the item to be recorded. And as was outlined previously, we're going to see with the adoption of the Internet of Things, IoT, with more sensors in washing machines and refrigerators and a whole bunch of things, we're going to see more and more of AI or machine learning be adopted. And that's where small businesses have an advantage as well, because there's going to be a need to fill the void with larger businesses, because there's going to be so many IoTs around there. So there's going to be the opportunities in cybersecurity and looking at new ways to provide the customer experience. And so I'm very excited about it. But as I mentioned before, the shortcoming or the thing that we have to be aware of is cybersecurity. That is going to be the undoing, or that's something that we need to always be on guard for, because right now someone from another country, another region, could control what's in your washing machine or what's in your refrigerator. Could turn on your lights. Could access your Siri or your Alexa and order things that you didn't order. And so those are some of the things that need to be addressed. And those who are creative, those who are entrepreneurial, those who are in small business, you can start a company and you could stay small, or you can grow to become a big company. But those are some of the opportunities that we see that are coming because of AI. And so next slide, please. So I just want to thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts, and I look forward to hearing your questions and to have a good dialogue. Thank you.
Dr. Winslow, thank you very much. And I have a question, and I think I'm going to open this question for Rachit and you as well. Currently, the way we interact with AI, or the AI as a mechanism, is we have these big vendors, Amazon, you name it, all of them providing us with the tools to use artificial intelligence. In our houses, and I'll give you an example, it's either an Alexa or Google Home or Siri to use it. But that's controlled by one corporation, controlling the access, controlling the bandwidth, controlling the gatekeeper of what you access and how you access it and how the purchasing happens. But if we just think of the parallel universe, right? Imagine our radios long time ago where you can just open up your radio and listen to any channel you want. And it could be a big channel or a small channel, or your neighbor next door that has some airway and he or she is projecting. Is AI now just for the big boys and the big girls? Or is it now, when is it open for everybody? When is it open for business for everybody? Why can't you have your, let's give it a name here. You know, your I don't know, call it Bob. You know, Bob is your AI or Susie or whatever it is, right? And it's open to anybody. Anybody that uses the code can jump in and list their services. And it's by region, it's in your neighborhood. So instead of you ordering coffee from the closest Starbucks or whatever, you can order coffee from Morgan down the street. When is this possible? Because this whole thing about US PAC, it's about small business, it's about medium-sized businesses, but it's also thinking in the future. When is this possible? When are we going to be open for this artificial intelligence to be available for everybody? Rachit, let's start with you. When is this possible? I want that to happen. I just don't want to order pizza from the same pizza vendors. I want to order it from Luigi's down the street.
Yeah, great question. So look, as I told earlier, right? So it's still proof of concept, right? And although we have now availability of systems and technology with high computing power, right, which are able to make the art of possible, but it is still coming at a cost. And that's why these big players are able to invest and lead and drive it, right? As the computing power, the accessibility to these tools and technologies, the cost of that access is going to come down. This is going to become reality for even all the players, right? And you will see a lot of more competition coming in, and a lot of these things being entered in the market by other players. Although the consolidation will definitely happen, but still you will see a lot of other companies being able to invest into these technologies and making the art of possible coming through. Let me give an example again. I would very simply, in next 37 seconds, explain it relating to one of the examples I gave. For example, Fractal also, we are investing in building these algorithms and training machines to predict diagnosis, but there's huge investment going on in here, right? And not many companies are able to make that investment, which is not only tool and technology, it's also people, right? But once these investments are made, right, and these scale, the cost of people as well as the cost of tools, technologies, and all is going to come down. It is going to get level set, and you will see these new products coming where algorithms are able to predict diagnosis coming at 1/10 the cost what they are coming in today.
Okay, great. Well, Dr. Winslow, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I actually think that there are pockets where that's actually taking place, where, you know, I think that it's not a question of whether that the technology is possible. It's, you know, what you're describing is basically what we had years ago, and it was called eBay, right? Where you had a place where the merchants could go or can buy and sell. So you didn't have to create your own store. You just sold things via eBay, and that's where the buyer and seller. And so now we're going to create portals where you can go and you can pick which restaurant or pick which merchant. You know, it might be an Emily's List or it might be a Craigslist type where that you order. And so there are pockets of those that are taking place, like out in the Bay Area, where a lot of restaurants are online or a lot of the merchants are online. And we're going to see that more and more, especially. I also think that we may also see some of that via some of the ISP, because now with the doing away of net neutrality, that may, unless the Congress comes up with something different, now you may see some of the providers, you know, creating their own portal that may actually compete with with the Amazons or with the Ubers in terms of access to the customer. But I do think those are coming. you know, it's just a matter of time, and in certain aspects, in certain places, you're actually seeing some of that taking place now.
Great. Thank you very much. I know we're running over here, so let's just take one question so we at least say we took a question from the audience. Jordan, are there any questions?
We don't have any questions.
Okay, so at least we asked the question then. Okay, gentlemen, it's 3:05 p.m. We're over 5 minutes. Artificial intelligence, I believe, is just the start. It's exciting at the same time as it's dangerous, as Dr. Winslow mentioned, but it is an art, and managing both the potential and mitigating for the dangers is an art. It's an art of management, but it also keeps us exciting here. Mr. Rachit and Dr. Winslow, we thank you for your time and your dedication to the Business Leadership Series. And have a wonderful day. And for all the listeners, we want to thank you again, and we look forward to our next Business Leadership Series. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.